Corrupt judge humiliated Mike Tyson in court. Then his lawyer revealed who he really was. The stale, recycled air of the courtroom hung heavy with the scent of old paper, polished wood, and nervous anticipation. Sunlight, filtered through tall, grimy windows, cast long, dusty streaks across the somber room. Mike Tyson sat at the defense table, his powerful frame seemingly diminished by the formal setting, clad in a dark, ill-fitting suit that seemed to chafe at his neck. His hands, once instruments of devastating power, rested calmly on the table, but a subtle tension in his jaw hinted at the immense effort it took to maintain his composure. Beside him, his lawyer, a sharp, bespectacled woman named Ms. Albright, whispered reassurances, her voice a low murmur against the hushed backdrop of the proceedings. The air was thick with the unspoken judgment of the gallery, a mix of curiosity and condemnation. The judge, a portly man named Judge Sterling, with a perpetually sour expression and a reputation for harshness, peered down from his elevated bench, his gaze sweeping over the courtroom with an air of self-importance. He adjusted his spectacles, then fixed his eyes on Mike. "Mr. Tyson," he began, his voice a gravelly drone that echoed slightly in the quiet room, "you stand accused of disturbing the peace, assault, and resisting arrest. These are serious charges, especially for a man with your history." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air, a thinly veiled jab at Mike's past. The gallery stirred, a few whispers breaking the silence, quickly hushed by a bailiff. Mike remained silent, his eyes fixed on the judge, his expression unreadable. "Do you understand the gravity of these accusations, Mr. Tyson?" Judge Sterling continued, his tone dripping with condescension. "Or is your understanding of the law as limited as your temper?" A few snickers rippled through the gallery, quickly suppressed. Ms. Albright leaned forward, about to object, but Mike subtly placed a hand on her arm, a silent signal to hold back. He simply nodded at the judge, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Judge Sterling scoffed, a dismissive sound that seemed to fill the room. A nod. How eloquent! I suppose we shouldn't expect much more from a man who communicates primarily with his fists. He then leaned back, a smug look on his face. "Let's be clear, Mr. Tyson, this is my courtroom, and in here your reputation as Iron Mike means absolutely nothing. Here, you are just another defendant, and frankly, a rather unimpressive one at that." The humiliation was palpable, a heavy cloak settling over Mike. The judge's words, delivered with such open contempt, were designed to belittle, to strip away any semblance of dignity. The gallery watched, some with morbid fascination, others with a quiet sense of discomfort. A young court reporter, barely out of law school, scribbled furiously, her face a mask of professional detachment, but her eyes occasionally darting to Mike, a flicker of pity in their depths. The air grew thick with the scent of old paper and the metallic tang of unspoken judgment. Judge Sterling, clearly enjoying his moment of power, continued his verbal assault. "I've seen men like you before, Mr. Tyson. All muscle, no brains, quick to anger, slow to reason, and utterly incapable of understanding the consequences of your actions." He then picked up a file, flipping through it with exaggerated slowness. "It says here you were involved in an altercation outside a soup kitchen, a place meant for charity, for helping the less fortunate, and you, a man who once earned millions, chose to cause a scene there? Disgraceful." He slammed the file shut with a sharp crack that made several people jump. "Perhaps you believe your celebrity status grants you immunity from common decency, Mr. Tyson. Let me assure you, it does not. In fact, it makes your behavior all the more reprehensible." The judge's voice rose, his face reddening slightly. "You are a public figure, Mr. Tyson, a role model, some might say, and yet you consistently demonstrate a complete disregard for the law, for order, for the very fabric of society." Mike remained silent, his gaze unwavering, but the muscle in his jaw twitched more noticeably now. Miss Albright, her face tight with suppressed anger, gripped her pen so hard her knuckles were white. She knew the full story, the truth behind the charges, and the judge's deliberate misrepresentation was infuriating. The court clerk, a stern-faced woman who usually showed no emotion, cast a quick, sympathetic glance towards Mike, a small sign that not everyone in the room shared the judge's contempt. The air was heavy with the weight of the judge's authority, his words designed to crush, to break. He was making a spectacle, using Mike Tyson as an example, not of justice, but of his own perceived power. And if you're wondering what kind of man can endure such public humiliation without a single flinch, or what hidden truth lies beneath the surface of these accusations, then you absolutely need to hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss the revelation that's about to unfold, a truth that will make this corrupt judge regret every single word. This story is far from over, and the real consequences are about to be delivered. Judge Sterling, basking in his perceived triumph, leaned forward, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "I have no doubt, Mr. Tyson, that you believe yourself above the law. But I assure you, by the time I am finished with this case, you will understand the true meaning of humility." He then gestured dismissively. "Miss Albright, do you have anything to add to this rather bleak picture?" Miss Albright, her eyes flashing with a controlled fury, slowly rose. She took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the judge. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and steady, "the defense would like to present a different perspective on who Mr. Tyson really is, and the circumstances surrounding these charges." Judge Sterling scoffed. "Oh, I'm sure you do. Another sob story, perhaps? A tale of a misunderstood celebrity?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Make it quick, counsel. My patience, unlike Mr. Tyson's criminal record, is not endless." Ms. Albright ignored his sarcasm. She walked calmly to the podium, her posture radiating quiet confidence. She didn't look at Mike, but her every movement was a testament to her belief in him. "Your Honor," she stated, her voice gaining strength, "the charges against Mr. Tyson stem from an incident at the Hope Haven Soup Kitchen. The police report, which I believe you have before you, states that Mr. Tyson assaulted a man and resisted arrest." She paused, allowing the words to resonate. What the report fails to adequately convey, however, is the full context of that situation. She then turned, not to the judge, but to the jury, her gaze sweeping over their faces. Mr. Tyson was not at the soup kitchen to cause trouble. He was there, as he has been every Tuesday for the past 3 years, volunteering. He serves meals, he cleans, he talks to the homeless, offering them comfort and support. He does this quietly, without fanfare, without media attention. A ripple of surprise went through the gallery. Even Judge Sterling's smug expression faltered slightly. Ms. Albright continued, her voice now filled with a quiet passion. "On the day in question, a known local troublemaker, a man named Victor Viper Thorne, who has a history of harassing the soup kitchen's patrons and staff, entered the premises. He was intoxicated and began verbally abusing an elderly homeless woman, threatening to steal her meager belongings. She then turned back to the judge, her eyes unwavering. Mr. Tyson, seeing this vulnerable woman being terrorized, intervened. He did not throw a punch. He did not initiate violence. He simply stepped between Viper Thorne and the elderly woman, asking him to leave. Viper Thorne, in his drunken rage, then lunged at Mr. Tyson, attempting to strike him with a broken bottle. A gasp went through the courtroom. Judge Sterling's face, which had been red with anger, was now pale with a dawning realization. Mr. Tyson, a man who has spent his life mastering the art of self-defense, merely disarmed Viper Thorne, using a defensive maneuver to prevent harm to himself and, more importantly, to the vulnerable people around him. The assault was a defensive action, a protection of the innocent. Miss Albright then picked up a photograph from her table, a grainy image, and held it up for the court to see. It showed Mike Tyson, not in a boxing ring, but in a simple apron, serving food to a line of grateful homeless individuals, a gentle smile on his face. "This, Your Honor," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction, "is who Mike Tyson really is. Not the caricature you have painted, but a man who dedicates his time to helping those less fortunate, a man who uses his strength to protect, not to harm." She then laid out several witness statements, not from celebrities or boxing promoters, but from the soup kitchen staff, from the elderly woman Viper Thorne had threatened, and from other homeless patrons, all corroborating her account. They spoke of Mike's kindness, his quiet generosity, his unwavering commitment to their community. The court was utterly silent, the only sound the rustle of papers as the jury members, their faces now etched with a mixture of shock and shame, reviewed the evidence. Judge Sterling, who had been so quick to condemn, now looked visibly uncomfortable, his gaze darting between Miss Albright, the photograph, and Mike Tyson, who still sat quietly, his expression unchanged. Miss Albright then addressed the charge of resisting arrest. When the police arrived, she explained, they found Viper Thorne still intoxicated and belligerent, claiming Mr. Tyson had attacked him. In the confusion, and without a full understanding of the situation, the officers attempted to restrain Mr. Tyson. He did not resist in an aggressive manner. He simply stood his ground, attempting to explain the situation, but was met with force due to the initial misunderstanding. She then presented a video, recorded by a bystander on a phone, which showed the chaotic scene. It clearly depicted Viper Thorne's aggression, Mike's calm defensive posture, and the subsequent misunderstanding by the arriving officers. The video played in silence, its images speaking louder than any words. It showed Mike not fighting, but trying to de-escalate, his powerful hands open, his body language defensive, not offensive. The moment Viper Thorne lunged with the bottle was undeniable. The officer's subsequent struggle to subdue Mike, who was clearly trying to communicate, was also evident. When the video ended, the courtroom remained in stunned silence. Judge Sterling, his face now a deep crimson, cleared his throat, his earlier arrogance completely shattered. He looked at Mike Tyson not with contempt, but with a dawning, profound shame. He had misjudged, he had humiliated, he had condemned a man based on preconceived notions and a superficial understanding of the facts. He had used his position to belittle a man who, in reality, was acting with courage and compassion. He had been the corrupt one, blinded by his own prejudice. He then looked at the jury, their faces now reflecting a clear understanding of the truth. He knew, without a doubt, that his initial judgment had been utterly wrong. "Mr. Tyson," Judge Sterling said, his voice now devoid of its earlier condescension, replaced by a strained humility, I owe you an apology, a profound apology. I allowed my preconceived notions, and frankly, my own biases, to cloud my judgment. I spoke out of turn, I made assumptions, and I publicly humiliated you without knowing the full truth." He then looked at the gallery, his voice gaining a new, somber tone. "I apologize to this court and to everyone present for my conduct. It was unbecoming of a judge, and it was unjust." He then turned back to Mike, his gaze unwavering. "Mr. Tyson, based on the evidence presented and the compelling testimony, I am dismissing all charges against you. Furthermore, I commend you for your actions at the Hope Haven Soup Kitchen. You acted with courage and integrity, protecting the vulnerable. You are a credit to your community." A wave of murmurs, then a quiet, spontaneous applause rippled through the courtroom. Mike Tyson, still quiet, simply nodded at the judge, a small, dignified acknowledgement. He then looked at Miss Albright, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. He rose from his seat, his powerful frame now radiating not menace, but a quiet strength, a profound sense of vindication. He walked out of the courtroom, not with a swagger, but with the quiet dignity of a man who had faced injustice and emerged with his integrity intact. The corrupt judge, humbled and exposed, watched him go, a stark lesson learned in front of everyone. Respect isn't taken by force. It's earned by character and quiet compassion. Silent doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes the quietest person carries the greatest power, and the most profound truths are revealed not in judgment, but in the unwavering light of integrity.